this episode of The Authentic Physician. This is where we have honest conversations about medicine, identity, and the health transitions women aren't necessarily prepared for. If you're a woman juggling work, caregiving, and a body that just no longer responds the way it used to, you're in the right place. Today's conversation is not about perfection, it's about truth. And I'm delighted today to introduce you to Dr. Susan Baumgaertel. I'm going to allow her to correctly tell me how to say her name again and give you a really great taste, I think, of a conversation that is deeply needed. So, welcome. I'm glad you're here, Susan.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted. And you said it just fine. My whole
Yes.
career, people always call me Dr. B because the rest was too hard. So yeah,
Yes.
but Susan's great.
I love it. Well, thank you for being so gracious. One of the things I'd love to know, you have so many accolades and credentials, and you've spent a lifetime working really hard to be the best at what you do. But if we strip all that aside, who are you outside your credentials? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh boy. Um, dare I, well, you can see with the little gray hair, as I enter my 60s, I'm in now
Yes.
my 60s, I find I'm a very different woman. In hopefully all the good ways. I think that I look back and I look at like what was bugging me when I was in my 20s or 30s, like, oh my God, that was so long ago. What should I have been thinking about a little differently in my 30s, 40s, 50s? And so I guess I know it's been said so many times, but these kind of the word the wisdom that we get as we're aging, we look back and we think about things like, wow, maybe I should kind of spread that to others. So that's really a part of me, not just professionally, but me. One thing I've done in the past couple of years, much more faithfully, is daily walking, and I must say it saved me in all the ways of the word save. I had a cancer diagnosis a couple of years back. I've had a lot of life kind of, upending things like everyone does, and I don't miss a day. I go out, whether, I'm in Seattle and we have this thing called an atmospheric river, which is, and then we have the bomb cyclone, which is like the West Coast version of the East Coast hurricanes. I mean, it doesn't matter what the weather is, I'm out there. And one of my friends years ago said, there's no such thing as bad weather, it's just bad clothing. So I find I solve all my problems in 45 minutes on my daily walk. I, I,
Love
I
that.
mean, I'm intervening with nature, the flowers, the birds, and people and their pets. But I come back. It's like the shower, but you can't take a 40-minute shower. It's a lot. It's a hot water bill. I solve everything, and that just grounds me.
Mm, beautiful. I love that. And so you talked about the different life transitions and stages, and we put your physician hat back on. And think about what you've watched in women's health over the last several decades. I'm curious where you are now versus then. Is there a belief that you hold deeply about women's health that you just fundamentally refuse to compromise on, despite all the changes that we've seen over the decades?
Well, that's a great question. I think I can answer that in a couple of ways. One thing that I think everyone needs to do better is listen.
Mm,
And I will not compromise on that because I think that we see the system changes, the healthcare system, the ruptures, the brokenness. Um, there's no time for listening.
right.
We see gaslighting of women in ways that are just beyond belief, and actually even self gaslighting, like people are not
Yeah.
trusting themselves. Listen to your inner wisdom, listen to yourself, get kind of that self compassion kind of juice going. So
Yeah.
I think that fundamentally for me is one of those kind of true north things. If we could listen better, all of us collectively listen better, um, there could be this unfurling, unraveling of petals of a flower or layers of an onion, where we kind of just get into more depth and more substance and really help women in ways that need to be helped in a much better way. I know that's very obtuse, but
Yeah.
and I'll get to my other point too, which is what I think there's a big pendulum going on. One of my favorite words is pendulum. I'm giving a talk tomorrow to a whole bunch of Northeast US states. Advocacy groups tomorrow, and my title of my talk is the pendulum of menopause. And when you think about a pendulum, it goes from like this angle to that angle, and they're extremes. And I think that we're in a society now, dare I say the obvious, where everything is polarized. our era, politics, economics, relationships, and everything, the kind of everything's polarized. And I think that is so damning, that is so damaging when it comes to healthcare and wellness and feeling good. And so when you think about women's health, and I'm very obviously very passionate about women's health, there's so much of these extremes that is still going on. Great example, and I'm not going to talk about hormones because that'd be a 3-hour talk, but hormones, great example, hormones.
Right.
When you think about the Women's Health Initiative back in the early 2001, 2002, 2003, and like, oh my God, every woman went off hormones and it was just chaos. And then, of course, more recently, the modern approach has been like, whoa, wait a minute, time out. There's a different interpretation. There's data, but really the data wasn't explained very well. Well, it doesn't have to be one of those Oprah moments like everyone gets a car and everyone goes on hormones. Let's
Right.
bring it back to the center. Let's make this individual. Let's make this person in front of you or in you. Let's like, what does this woman need? Instead of like, oh my God, they're terrible for you. Or, oh my God, why aren't you on them already? And so
Right.
it's a lot on answer, but I think that there's
Hmm.
that to me is so vital to continue that discussion about.
I love that you point that out because you've been in medicine a lot longer than I have, and you've seen a lot more than I have, right? I distinctly recall in medical school, one of the things they interviewed for us before we could even consider being a doctor, right, was what is evidence based medicine? And that is like the ride or die, I feel like, of my generation. I suspect it was always there, but it may not have been articulated in that messaging.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
over the past 15 years, one of the things I see more and more as the health payer systems, the insurance companies, and the government, and all these evolve, is this idea of value based care and population health. But that goes exactly against what you and I do in our exam room, where we're
yeah,
tailoring it to the individual.
yeah.
There's a tension there. And I wonder, is that always going to, is that, should it be there, first of all, right? Or are we missing something bigger when we zoom out?
Oh my gosh, where do I begin? I have so many opinions on this.
Yeah,
I think the biggest one is honestly, I think there is a huge distrust of physicians nowadays.
absolutely.
When I went into medicine, oh my God, that was 1989. Yeah, I was at medical school training and beyond. I started my private practice big in a big system in
Yes,
1996. And believe me, I don't. I sure hope I don't have that arrogant, chip on my
mhm,
shoulder. I wasn't the be all to end all. I wasn't like, oh,
yeah,
listen to me, I'm important. But somehow we've moved from physicians being wise, counseling patients,
yes,
caring for patients, giving them
yes,
the best information possible to the same group of the population and think like, ooh, they didn't have time for me last time. My visits was
right,
six minutes long,
right,
and I didn't even get around to my questions. In fact, I didn't even see my doctor. I saw someone who was subbing in because my doctor was too busy to see me. So it's like this. There's
right.
this erosion, and I think
Mhm.
that is so that's damning. That is very
Yes,
frustrating. And
yes,
doctors, we know this. I have incredible colleagues who are literally stuck in systems, the
right,
corporatization of medical care.
yes,
And and dare I say the word box checking, but yeah, they're checking the boxes because they have to
right,
follow these metrics. It's about payment, it's about insurance reimbursement, that whole rat race. And it's
yes,
all swirling around. And so here you, the patient, are walking in the
mhm,
door and you're being processed.
right,
And that to me is sad. That is one of the biggest parts of why I stepped out. And 5 years ago now, oh my God, I can't believe it. I left after 25 years of clinical work in one place. And I thought, there's got to be something different that I can do. And so that's where I really started to look at my patient advocacy approach and,
mhm,
how can I be of service, of better
yeah.
service to this person in front of me?
What you're saying resonates so much with the conversations I have with my patients, but also what I experience when I navigate the healthcare system as a patient,
Yeah,
right? And I would offer that I don't think COVID caused the distrust, but I think it unmasked a smoldering distrust and magnified it.
yeah, yeah,
I think there were
yeah,
things we probably did right and things we did very wrong as physicians and as so-called
yeah,
experts that
yeah,
didn't help this what you're talking about. So
yeah.
in the aftermath of that, you think of, I forgot what you just called the Western storm, the hurricane, the tornado, whatever the storm you lived through.
The
In the
bomb
aftermath,
cyclone.
yes, yes, that's what it was. you have to get up and move forward, right? And I think that's why these conversations between myself and other physicians are helpful, is because people can finally kind of get a glimpse of what we know, and we have gotten used to the system even though
Yeah,
we know it's very broken.
yeah,
I wonder your opinion on this. I don't think that most patients appreciate how little control physicians have in the
yeah,
healthcare system.
yeah.
But I think they, whether it's from TV or how it used to be or their grandparents' version, right? Like, what happened? Did physicians used to have more control? Where did things go wrong?
We had more time.
Okay.
We had more control, if that's the right word. We
Mhm,
had more, we were able to manage our schedules.
mhm.
We were able to manage the volume, how many patients you saw. I mean, I remember in 1996, early, the mid 90s, late 90s, at the end of my day, and this is, I did hospital work for at least 15 years. So, like, you start your day at 4 a.m., do your rounds and so forth, run to the office, see your patients all day, and then me go back and admit someone, and then you're on your phone
Yes.
talking to people. But the one thing that I remember that I don't do in the modern time is I would have about an hour at the end of my day before I go home and have a late dinner, and
Right.
I'd be on the phone. I'd be talking to a patient about their test result, like, oh, that
Mhm,
pathology report came back.
mhm.
Um, there were some cancer cells. Let's talk about what that means. I have a colleague down the hall I want you to go see. We can get you in tomorrow. Oh my God, gone are those
Yeah.
days getting in tomorrow. And I
Mhm.
want to kind of let you, pry you off the ceiling and let's not panic. Let's talk about the realities. We don't know enough yet, but here's the next steps. Well, now, dare I say, we talk about the patient portal. Someone gets their test results when they're least expecting it. And it's like,
Right.
ooh, you have cancer. Like, what? What?
And they see it before you do.
And they see it before the doctor does.
Yes.
And by the way, let's just, it's Friday at 5 p.m. Oh, honey, they're not going to get anyone in the office to respond to
No.
them to next Monday. And by
Right.
then it's like Monday's Monday, which is often very
Yes.
busy in doctors, and maybe it's a
Right.
holiday or they're on break. So, I
Right.
mean, they can't. So the very fact we have this amazing portal, which is
Yes.
supposed to improve access and communication, so forth, is
Mhm.
actually sometimes harmful. And so we didn't have that to balance in the
Yeah.
past. There was none of that. So this is not a dissertation on like evils of the EMR. We can go on to that. Would be an hour-long program. There's some incredible benefits
Yes.
of it, but
Yes.
it's really just the whole point is we've changed that doctor-patient relationship.
Mhm.
And I think that's the sadness for me. That's the distrust
Yeah.
as well. I agree with you. COVID wasn't it all, but that just made things worse. In fact, and I'm a patient too, of course, but
Mhm.
I I found COVID to be very harmful as a physician because people came in and they were mad at me.
Right.
And they weren't mad at me. They were
Right.
mad at the system or the
Yes.
fact they couldn't get in or the fact
Yes.
they haven't left their house in X, Y, and Z. And so, but they took it, they took the anger out on me.
Right.
And that was hard because here, if let's say you're a worker in a restaurant, like, well, here's your breakfast. I'm sorry it didn't work out for you. I have three more
Mhm.
customers. Well,
Right.
guess what? We're here because we care about people. We're trying to
Right.
help them. And by the
Yes.
way, we're rated like kitchen appliances. So if they got pissed off they couldn't find parking, then oh, they got
Yep.
a 1 star. Like I have no control over the parking lot. So
Correct.
that whole
Yeah.
mess I think kind of exploded. And we could talk about burnout, but actually I think it's more about moral injury. The
Mhm.
fact that our very fibers of our beings, for the most
Yeah.
part, we're trying to help people,
Right.
and yet we were being harmed in the process. And so that was a big kind of like whoa timeout for a
Right.
lot of people.
And we saw many physicians exit, and even still, we're seeing more and more physicians leaving or retiring early,
Yeah,
compared to a couple of decades ago.
yeah,
So, as I think about system problems and women's health specifically, especially
yeah,
for that woman out there who is juggling the job and she's the sandwich generation, she's caregiving,
yeah,
she's got all the balls in the air.
yeah.
Medicine is failing women. And I suspect we could find a lot of different ways, but if you had to pinpoint or prioritize one area that you can't get over it, it makes you angry inside. Where have we failed women the most? Is it the portal or is there something different?
No, I think the portal's just part of it. I think it's responding to what women need now.
Mhm,
Women don't need a lecture.
mhm.
They don't need, oh, I'll refer you to my colleague, but it's 6 months from now.
Right.
Um, again, kind of full circle, like they need to be listened to. And so when
Yes.
I advocate for a lot of my women patients who are especially in the perimenopause or menopausal kind of zone, there are several things I think that are really important. And one is, oh my gosh, I'm going to say this, is like, don't get your advice from the internet.
Pretty
You know,
please.
the influencers and all of social media, like you can't escape. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with social media,
Right.
but that is not where you get your bona fide, honest to goodness, sound,
Right.
logical, helpful, wise medical advice when it comes to
Yes.
perimenopause. But of course, you know, when I set out, the kind of dovetails to kind of when I set out to write my book, I thought, well, okay, I don't want something that's dumbed down, that's really kind of stupid. But I also don't want it to be a medical textbook because who has time for that, right? So there has to be this give and take. And so I think that there has to be some expectation that we need to find ways to improve access to real people, to doctors, not just to the internet.
Right.
But and I think that there are some simple techniques that I find are valuable to use when you, meaning you are the
Mm-hmm.
patient,
Mm-hmm.
trying to see your doctor and you have some issues, especially about menopause. Prepare for that appointment. No different than you prepare for a really important meeting or a work meeting. So you wouldn't just come in and just shoot from the hip and like, oh my God, I think there were 5 things I wanted to talk about, but I don't remember like last night. And then I had a busy morning and then all of a sudden the meeting's over. Like, oh, I have 5 more questions. Like, not going to work.
Right.
Prepare for that meeting. Keep it succinct. I tell people, you know, write it down, but one piece of paper, not three, not with 12 links to articles no one's ever going to read. One
Yeah.
page, one side, lots of white space, bullet
Yes.
points, keep it simple. If you have 10 topics, pick your top 3 you want to talk about. Really focus, get organized. I make
Yes.
copies, give them to the medical assistant before they walk in the room, give them to the doctor, keep one, and, and,
Yeah.
and run it like a meeting. This is your meeting about your
Right.
health, right?
Right.
Assuming you have time. Obviously, that's the biggie, you know. So if you do that, then I find it's less likely that you're going to apologize for asking questions. So many women will come in, they're in for a refill of their blood pressure medicine. And by the way, they have to schedule their mammogram. And oh yeah, you know, their grandfather had colon cancer. When am I due?
Mm-hmm.
You know, these questions come up, and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, but you know, I don't want to talk about it, but you know, I have some vaginal dryness and I think I might
Right.
have a UTI and I don't know what's going on. You know, don't apologize for asking these questions. It's your
Yeah.
body. Write them down,
Right.
prioritize. Again, that's
Right.
really key. The other thing too is, and this is going to be a little hard because again, as a physician, as a patient, there are two sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule or suggest a way to follow up. So many times the visit happens, you walk out like, oh, I had a good discussion. This was great. My doctor really listened to. They're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And then whatever it is they did, often like tests or blood tests, they come back and everything looks fine, portal. And you're like, well, now what do I do?
Right.
And there's no like
You're
next
left
step.
hanging.
And that's where there's that disconnect. It's like, wait a minute, so what do I do? And then of course there's communication back and forth. By the time you get an answer, often it's like, well, I don't know what's going on. Go see my colleague, and that's 6 months later. So again,
Right.
at the front end, kind of partner with them, help
Mm-hmm.
them help you, help them be more efficient.
I love
And
that.
then the last thing I would add really is honestly, all of us need this, but especially as patients, you know, learn how to channel your frustration or even your anger. If you're pissed off at the system or the parking garage or the
Right.
fact you had a copay and it's going up or
Yes.
your insurance is not covering
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, don't get mad at your doctor about it. You know,
Right.
recognize that they probably have very similar, if not parallel issues that they're dealing
Mm-hmm.
with too. Again, make it a
Yes.
partnership.
I love that. Well said. And I think,
Yeah.
you're right. You could go on for hours about all the different things you learn and the different nuances, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. If we can go into, when we're wearing our patient hats, go into those meetings prepared with what are my 3 priorities, knowing we may not even get to all 3 if number 1 is really intense,
Yeah.
but it's really unrealistic to have a whole list of patient
Yeah.
questions and to have the person who's with you trying to help you take notes have their list. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so honoring the need to serve and to heal and meeting that with the fact that there's others that we have to balance too. It's tough. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I do want to turn a little bit more to midlife women specifically. So, if one of our listeners, 35 to 55, and she's starting to wonder, am I having changes? They're in the perimenopause. Maybe it's very clear to her she's in menopause. All along that spectrum, there's this whole cultural revolution happening right now, right? And there's all these women who are realizing this is a thing, and maybe I need to talk to my doctor about it. And maybe I do have access to what my mom went through. Maybe I don't, but I have a lot of
Mm,
questions. And there's a
mhm.
lot of advice out there. You mentioned Dr. Google. I'm dealing with Dr. Chat GPT more and more, right?
Yeah.
What advice in your world, what are you seeing? What advice are women getting all the time that's actually harmful to them at this stage?
Well, I'm going to sound like I'm two-faced because really that's the pendulum again.
Mhm.
I feel like 5 years ago, there's not a lot of talk about perimenopause. We were just kind of menopause was having its moment.
Yes.
Now I think it's all about perimenopause.
Right.
The damning part of that is like someone who's 29 or 32 is like, oh, could this perimenopause? Like, oh my God,
Yep.
this is life. I
Mhm.
mean, we don't have to ascribe everything going on with us as part of perimenopause or menopause. Now, that being said, this two-faced part of me, if
Right.
you're 51, you look back and say, oh my God, that's what was going on 5 years
Right.
ago. I have this
Right.
brain fog. Now I get it.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean we ignore it, but to just blanket like, oh, it must be perimenopause. No,
Right.
you can have sleep problems and it's not always menopause. You can have
Correct.
problems with your weight and it's not always menopause. You can have
Right.
trouble, and so on and so forth. So I think that's been a little challenging.
Mhm.
And maybe that unfortunately adds to the frustration when they go into their doctor. And let's say the conversation is, and let's say, just say they're 30, 35. And they're saying, like, oh my gosh, I have to pee more often. And, I think I'm fluid retention and I'm gaining weight. I don't know what's going on. Could this be menopause? Well, prepare that for that eye roll that, most of the doctors would say, like, you're 35.
Mhm.
It's not it. Now, what happened just there? Well, the patient feels like they were not listened to. And in fact, they were maybe gaslit, like, oh, it's what's your problem? This is not, it's
Right.
not hormones. Well, often they might go to see someone else, and it depends on where you live and what part of the country. You might see a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant or someone who is maybe has a clinic or has their own kind of business model
Yeah.
related to this.
Chiropractic.
And suddenly they're validated, like, oh yeah, oh all of your 42 things are definitely
Right.
perimenopause, and they're left with pills and potions and things that I think are snake oil. So what has happened?
Yeah.
How can you, the patient, kind of test drive this? How can you validate what is real
Right.
and what's accurate? That is where I think the problem lies. Long ago, especially before the internet, it's like, what did your mom do? Your best friend or your aunt or your neighbor, or your coworker,
Mhm.
you kind of like, oh, she said this happened to her. Maybe that's happening. That's what's happening to me. That's not a
Right.
good way to get medical advice. But it happens. So it happens in communities or it happens in cultures. So I
Mhm.
think if you can partner with your physician, have a
Yeah.
relationship with them, have this honest discussion about ways to kind of navigate this, there's less resentment and
Yeah.
less friction, I think.
I think that's a fair point. And even within just physicians, there is a wide split in the same specialty and different, like internal medicine versus OBGYN versus
Yep.
family medicine.
Yep.
There's a lot of variance in where you trained and whether you've done additional training in menopause. And so it's
Yes.
in the defense of people who are questioning and going through it, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it can be very difficult and super frustrating to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
We know there's physiologic biology happening, but it's still every week. I have someone ask me, for example, should I get my labs done? And I tend to follow the North American Menopause Society, which, side note, you can look up a certified menopause practitioner there in your area if you want to find someone who can get you more information and who has special training in this. But I tend to follow their recommendations, but not everyone does. And so I'm curious, do you run into that in your neck of the woods, or what happens for you?
Yeah, and they've rebranded them now called the Menopause Society.
Mhm.
And yeah, they have a very good website, both patient facing and physician facing. I'm part of their society. I decided not to get certified because I felt like after 32 years, I didn't need another certification. But I find that it's a great starting point. Again, getting some kind of valid websites that are reasonable. When I I'll take you back in time when I was thinking about writing a book and eventually wrote my book. Um, I thought, what can I do that is not so pointed that in 5 years it's going to be old news or
Mhm.
actually inaccurate? And so all throughout my book, I did mention hormones. So it's not a book about hormones. And I keep coming back to that topic because that's kind of the hot button. Women everywhere need to understand that that's an absolute, valid, essential part of the equation, but it's not the only thing. And so we shouldn't run away from all the other things that can be so supportive of this perimenopause or menopause journey, and just focus on the hot, sexy new topic, which is hormones. So I think that's it's hard to say that because it sounds in a way like I'm putting it down. I'm not.
Yeah.
Some women, actually many women, are just like, oh my God, my life was saved. You'll pry that prescription from my cold dead hands. I mean,
Right.
honestly, it's been life saving. And as we look at more data and more studies specifically addressing hormones and heart disease, hormones and bone health, hormones and dementia,
Yeah.
hormones and cancer. I mean, there's going to be more valuable input and direction we can give as we go on. So I guess I say all that to really kind of emphasize that you have to approach this from a collect information perspective, coming back to some of the basics, which is really about how to eat and live and be well and be healthy, um, and try not to get sucked down that rabbit hole of kind of the latest, greatest, best, pill and potion that, of course, if you go
Yeah.
to the website, you're going to buy. So follow the money. It should never be about the money.
Right. Yes. Well said. And that makes me think again of just some of the people, as conversations I've been having in recent weeks with my patients and then with fellow physicians. Um, and you talked about being an advocate, so that's kind of where I'm going with this is we're missing things, but I think there's also probably truths that are there that make people really uncomfortable. You talk about following the money and how much big business plays a role in the care you and I provide in the exam room.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that you want to share, or maybe too big of a topic for this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where to start. I was thinking about
Yeah.
something else you mentioned a few minutes ago, and about getting tests and results. I find that that's also a slippery slope because, to be frank, unless you're really early on or something really terrible going on with your menstrual history or having bleeding postmenopause, which is never normal,
Right.
um, you don't need a whole bunch of tests. It's kind of like the equivalent, and when I say this, that light bulb goes on over people's heads. When you have a child or when you were a child, you didn't need a blood test to know that you're going through puberty.
Right.
We generally don't need a blood test to know that you're going through menopause. And
Right.
so people look at me like, what? I'm like, what about my levels? I should get my
Yeah.
levels checked. Like, no, first of all, they fluctuate, and it doesn't help us clinically unless there's something
Right.
medically wrong or that we're trying to investigate further. And so that's where I think too much data, too many tests can absolutely lose the forest for the trees. It takes away. And so, in fact, I think it's harmful in another way, not just financially, because you spent money that something is really not worthwhile to you, but it takes away from the discussion, the intelligent, hopefully helpful discussion you're going to have with your doctor, because you're left with, oh, we're just doing a bunch of tests. They
Right.
come back in certain ranges or normal or whatever. And then all you're doing is talking about the lab test. You're not talking about the person. Like, treat the person, not the test. I mean, it just frustrates me to no end.
Yeah.
The other part of that, as a physician, we all know we kind of cringe when a patient comes in and they have their long printout of
Yes.
25 different things that they want you to do.
Right.
And actually, nowadays, there's direct access. A lot of patients can order their own tests. Won't even go into that discussion, or they come in with results already. And
Right.
so, what are we doing here? That's a disconnect. We're suddenly looking at a bunch of numbers, bunch of data that really doesn't translate to helping someone. And if we can just pull back a bit and say, like, oh, well, wait a minute. You're 49, you're having trouble sleeping, you feel, you're sweating at night and you're getting irritable and you've gained a little weight, like, ding, 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 ding. You are in perimenopause, assuming they haven't, stopped their periods. So we don't need a bunch of blood tests to tell us that. And so that discussion is often skipped. And I think
Yes.
that's where things get really kind of mucked up.
Yeah. I think that's a really great way. I'm going to steal that term from you. I think where I trained and where I practice today are two culturally geographic different locations, New York City versus St. Louis. And as I talk to colleagues around the country, I get a sense that they also feel this tension of we're doing the best we can with the information we have, and it's not good enough,
Mm.
either for our patients, for what we expect of ourselves, or for, let's say, our administrators. If we're lucky enough to own our own business and have our own pathway, then ourselves. But I think patients are overwhelmingly not only distrustful and frustrated, but feel abandoned
Yeah.
by who they view as the leaders in medicine. So, with that landscape painted, and knowing you've got decades of seeing different things and different experiments within the healthcare system, if you wave your magic wand and you can fix up to 3 things for women to make women's experience better, what are those big 3 things?
You mean for the systems to make it better or for the individual
For
doctors to make it
for the
better?
patient and the physician experiences to both be better because we're healing the system. The trust is restored. It's we all understand these are not going to happen today, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not the expectation for this answer. But I'm just curious. You've got a lot of experience that most people don't have as you've
Well,
advocated and seen
if this
different
is the
things.
crystal ball question, I would say everyone on both sides and all sides needs more time.
Hmm.
You can't possibly have a conversation about perimenopause or menopause for the most part in a 6 or 8 or 10 or even 15-minute visit, especially when you're
No,
doing other box checking things. You can't.
right.
So what it does is it reinforces like, oh, that's really not important. Let's
Hmm.
talk about your blood pressure, but yeah, menopause, whatever. So that has got to change.
Yeah,
We've got to make that much more valid and more important. Well, what's the other part of the equation? Yeah, insurance coverage. So then insurance coverage needs to
right.
recognize if a woman comes in and wants to talk about a lot of important things that are happening
Yes.
to their body or to their mental health or whatever in midlife, um, that you don't have to order a bunch of tests. You don't have to prescribe anything necessarily,
Hmm.
but that discussion should be reimbursed because let's face it, a lot of these things are all coming back to money. How are
Hmm.
hospitals and corporations and clinics, how do they keep it up? Well, they have
Yeah,
to get paid by someone, either patients if
right.
it's patient pay, private pay, or by insurance industries and so forth. So
Hmm.
it's got to be billable. Well, if that's billable, you have to code and have a code. I mean, all this stuff is all mixed together. It really
Right.
is. So if you take a doctor in a typical system, and let's say they see 25 patients, ouch, yeah, 25 patients a day, perhaps. Um, if you say, well, there's no way I can have a 45-minute discussion, so maybe I only see 12 patients a day, suddenly they're not bringing in the revenue.
Right.
So this value, or sorry, this lack of value that's
Hmm.
placed on this incredibly important conversation, which is typically with less of the non-surgical specialties. I know OBGYN is surgical, but it could be
Hmm.
it could be adolescent medicine specialists, could be internal medicine, could be family practice, and so forth. Maybe even peds. You never know. So
Right.
it's that is a sadness to me that an orthopedic surgeon, not to pick on them, can bring
Right.
in tons of money for that hip replacement, but if you have a 45-minute or even hour-long discussion, that's a luxury with someone about their menopausal issues.
Right.
Yeah, good luck. So that has got to change. I think the concept of listening um, needs to change as well, both ways.
Right.
So physicians were so darn busy, your hands on the
Hmm.
doorknob, like, oh, I have chest pain. Oh my God.
Right.
Everyone's typical. Well,
Hmm.
well, let's not have those oh my God moments. Let's sit down and make
Yeah.
time and
Hmm.
actually listen.
Hmm.
Um, the patient needs to also listen and to
Right.
realize that hopefully this person in front of them is trying to partner with them and to
Yes.
help them. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, you are. And because of the patient hat or the patient advocate hat I've worn in my own stories, I've realized how badly we listen to patients, right? Because we really are literally trying to just get to the next thing so we don't drown before we see
Yeah.
25 patients would be a nice day. A lot of it's more than that.
And I just realized, to kind of toss into that, something you just said made me think about it. Too many times, if we're trying to help someone, we are thinking about our own experience.
Mm.
A great example would be diabetes. I'm not diabetic, but someone who's diabetic and like they know everything about insulin, they know about meal plans, carbs, you name it. They just have all the math done and they're
Yeah.
really good at it. Well, they have a friend or coworker who's, oh my God, I was told I have diabetes. Oh, let me tell you all about diabetes. Like,
Right.
no, you and diabetes. You're not a diabetic
Correct.
educator or so
Yep.
unfortunately there's so much of that when it comes to menopause.
Yes.
Like, oh honey, I remember when I had period problems. Like, oh, let me tell
Right.
you what comes next. Like, no,
Right.
that was your experience now, not me. So
It's like the
as you
childbirth comparisons.
yeah, it is.
Right.
So it's really hard because it's human nature. Maybe it's how you identify with someone and share stories
Hmm.
and so forth. I get that, but oh my gosh, when I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, I did not take kindly to I hate to say it, but physician colleagues who said like,
Right.
oh well, my aunt had that. It's like, who
Yeah.
cares about your aunt? This is my
Right.
cancer.
Right.
So if we could just chill on that
Yeah.
and recognize that yes, we have our own. Oh, we're human beings. We bring those experiences into conversations, but if we could just relax and listen to that person
Yeah.
and meet them where they're at and not complete their story with your own, that would be so valuable.
That's such an interesting point because we do share stories as humans and we do make connection through shared experiences, right?
Yeah,
And I know any physician could tell you that they've heard some iteration of my aunt's second cousin, third boyfriend had this, right?
yeah,
Therefore, I
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I will never remember what I just said in that order, but that's my perimenopause brain.
Aunt's
But
third cousin's second boyfriend. There.
something like that, right? I just think it's so interesting because we want to connect with each other,
Right.
and I truly believe, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. There are some of our colleagues, and we may have been there earlier in our journey too. Where we just didn't listen, right? We didn't get it.
Yeah.
We didn't appreciate the humans need to be heard.
Yeah.
And one of the most astounding things I hear it regularly in our clinic is that I don't think I've had someone just sit there and listen to me for a long time. A doctor, right? Like that's what we do and that's how we've created our business. That is not the luxury of most physicians. Before I
Yeah.
created this business, I had 3,000 patients and
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I don't criticize our colleagues for what they're trying to swim through.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do think that unless physicians and patients coordinate, this isn't going to change because right now it's not built around physicians and patients, it's built around money and
Yeah.
metrics. And there's a
Yeah.
place to measure. We do lab tests all the time. We are great at test and measure, right?
Yep.
But are
Yeah.
we testing and measuring things that matter
Right.
and add value to people's quality of life?
Right. And I think
And
that that testing sometimes, not always, but it
yeah,
just kicks the can down the road
hmm,
for a discussion
right,
that then is not had. And that
correct.
discussion is through a portal with someone who
Hmm.
you didn't even talk to begin with. So the whole thing is a mess.
Agree, completely agree. And the portal, I remember in residency, we had a little bit of having to message the portal, but I don't think it was ever nearly as much as it is now. And
Yeah.
so many of my patients are starting to take what is written, let's say on an x ray or a lab report,
Yeah.
as educational information and they copy and paste it into chat gpt and they say their understanding of why we did the test, which may not be the reason I did the test, and then when I call to tell them, yeah, you don't have pneumonia, you need to use a spirometer and breathe better. And they're like, oh no, I have pneumonia in six of my, lobes and I'm dying. And I'm like, no, right?
Yeah.
Just no. And there has
Yeah.
to be connection. But when I've had my patient hat on, I've sat on hold and waited for the doctor to call me back and they never do. And
Yeah.
tests that I thought needed to be ordered weren't. So like
Yeah.
it goes both ways. As you were saying, we need to listen both
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that 2016 CARES Act really kind of did us in terms of as a patient, who wouldn't want data? Who
right.
wouldn't want to get your results like
Yeah.
yesterday? Who
Uh-huh.
wouldn't want to get stuff that you typically had to wait 1, 2, 3 weeks to get?
Right.
Of
Right.
course, access. It's you.
Yes.
This is your data.
Yes.
But I think the harm that's done is it's just it's a report, it's a number, it's a graph, it's a
Mhm.
path report. It needs to be interpreted.
Right.
And I think that
Context
that
matters.
interpretation part, physicians as healers, physicians as listeners, we are interpreters. And
Right.
we have used, and I'll just use myself for example, 32 years of my experience to kind of come at why in 1 minute I think this is this and it's not that,
Right.
which you can't do. People, I will respectfully disagree when people's like, I've done my research. Well, that means you've spent 20 years in a research lab? No.
Mhm.
There's this great parachute study. Have you heard that? Where several years back, it was actually real, got published in the British Medical Journal or whatever. And, basically they said that they were setting out, it was a randomized, controlled, not blinded, but controlled study, looking at whether people would increase their risk of harm or death if they did not use a parachute when they jumped out of a plane. I'm thinking, like, what the heck, is
Who
this a
does that
joke?
experiment,
So
right?
reading about, I mean, I have the whole
Yeah.
thing printed up somewhere, but here's my point: is this. You could jump quickly to the conclusions like, oh, parachutes didn't save you. It's like, what? We all know that, like, duh, that's like stupid to even do that.
Right.
But guess what? You didn't read the method, and you didn't go into the details of, and like, you didn't read the long summary. You just
Hmm.
read the bullet summary. Well, guess what happens to, AI or ChatGPT?
Right.
It tells you some quick bullet points. Well, why are you trusting your health to bullet points? Like, if I'm trying to build a cabinet from IKEA and I don't have the right wrench, yeah, I'm going to look this thing up.
Hmm.
But you don't trust your health to that. So that's that disconnect.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this is here to stay and it's going to
Right.
get more prevalent,
Absolutely.
but we need to have that partnership with it. I guess that's the best way
Hmm.
of putting it. And it's never going to replace that kind of mental thought
Right.
process. And by the way, I do a lot of things with my gut.
Hmm.
There's a gut instinct, and my previous nurse years ago used to say, like, oh my God, you talk about your gut again, I'm going to leave. Because every time someone come in, there was something really crazy going. I said, like, I think
Hmm.
she has cancer. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, your gut's talking. Sure enough, she had cancer. It's like a
Yeah.
divining rod. And then
Ugh.
and then other times people were really sick, and it's like, I think they're
Yeah.
fine. And so my nurse
Right.
always teased me, like, oh, it's your gut talk. Like, listen to that. That's inner wisdom. That's
Hmm.
women's wisdom. When you think
Yes.
about menopause, listen, learn to listen and develop and trust that, and not just go on something that maybe isn't accurate.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's gotten so bad in our area that I tell people you're going to see the results before I do. If they scare you, feel free to give me a call, right? Like we will hit the high levels and then we may have a follow-up appointment to discuss the details. But it's
Yeah,
just easier to assume they're going to have it now
yeah,
and to assume that they're going to Google it. And so
yeah,
I've started telling people, I promise you, I will give you every bit of information you want on this.
yeah,
I promise you, I will. This is not my goal to withhold from you. So I think that for me, that's how I've started working to rebuild trust. Is just increasing that transparency, explaining expectations, how things work in our local system, which of course are different. If you move across
yeah,
the country, it's going to be a little different. But I think that that is definitely something that we can all do 1% better, right? If we do 1% better in a year every
yeah,
day, it'll be nearly 40% better by that end of that year.
yep,
And so, what have we not talked about? What message do you want to make sure our listeners hear that's just really core that we haven't touched on?
oh my gosh. um I don't know. There's so many so many themes out there. I would
Yeah.
say when it comes to being a patient, female, 30s to 50s, that premenopause, perimenopause, even menopause, this is not a life sentence. This is not horrible. This is a phase
Yeah.
of life we go through. But to recognize that, what else happens in midlife? Well, some people are caring for older parents, or maybe they're dying, or they have illness. Some
Right.
people are getting remarried or maybe divorced. Some people maybe are getting fired, or they just decide they want to quit and retire early, or they're just switching jobs. People who have kids, they're growing up. Sometimes they're empty nesters. I mean, just like the list goes on and on. And so
It
be
does.
kind to yourself. I
Mhm.
think that there's a lot of pressure now, and I guess that's the right word, to kind of like instantly, oh, hormones will fix me. Well, it doesn't fix everything I just listed, you know.
Right.
Or I want to go see this person because I want to be referred to that person. It's like just slow down, take a breath, think about things are what is valuable to you, what gives you joy, what gives
Mhm.
you hope. We're in crazy stressful times. That's an understatement. You have to come
Yeah.
back to kind of that keeping it close. You have to kind of think about your close family and your structure. And honestly, not everyone has the choice, but if your doctor is not available to you, or they're not listening to you, and doesn't mean that they're intentionally harming you, but their system is, maybe you need to switch. There are many different ways of getting medical care that may not be perfect and may not be available to everyone if you're rural or living in different places. But there's a big, huge movement. It's called direct primary care or direct care that you can avail yourself of. It's not for the wealthy. It's not for the extra rich. It just improves access.
Right.
And maybe it's making use of telemedicine a bit better in terms of access. So you may have to cobble together some of kind of the better ways to get care, but stay focused. Midlife is full of challenge, but you need to create your own kind of advocacy group as you
Yes.
go through it.
Right, absolutely. And you mentioned briefly, tell us a little bit more about your book. What's it called? Where can people find it?
Yeah, so it's called the Menopause Menu. And it's not a Bible, it's not a medical tome. It's really more like a coffee table book. And you open it up, you don't have to read it from A to Z. Basically, you can open it at any point and read for 5 minutes. It's organized by chapter. There's 16 chapters that kind of match maybe the most common 16 things that women have to deal with or symptoms of perimenopause, menopause. There's art, there's recipes, of course. I love food. There's poetry, there's haiku, there are quotes from many professionals and many patients. There's tidbits of wisdom. There's kind of lots of interesting kind of it's a mishmash, but it's delightful because I think because it's refreshing, it's fun, and it's not something that's just laser focused on one thing. So that was really a pleasure. Before I did the book, I have the website also very similar. It's Menopause Menu. So menopausemenu.com is really my blog site. So I have blogs and videos and recipes on it, but it has all different categories. You can kind of look at past articles and past videos and lectures and so forth. So it's kind of a composite of how to get good information. I will put in a plug for my most recent exciting adventure, which is called Voices with Vigor, which is a talk show, and it's live. Oh my God,
I
live
love
talk
it.
show. It's health adjacent, so it's not all healthcare topics. However, this month, in just a week, we'll have three wonderful, incredible doctors talking about weight management. So don't want to miss. It's all free. It's all live. It's all virtual. So that's also tucked away under the talk show tab on my Menopause Menu website. My professional site is mymdadvocate.com. I, at this point, still have my medical license, of course, and so I am only licensed to care for people in Washington State. So if you're in Washington State, I'd be delighted to help you out. But I've also really kind of turned a new leaf in terms of helping colleagues. In the past couple of years, helped about 20 different colleagues all across the country think about pivoting or changing what they're doing in terms of I'm not ready to retire, but I can't do this anymore. How do I still help people and what are my options? So it's just been really a fun ride for me.
I love it. You've got so many different moving pieces and projects going. It's that's fantastic. Kudos to you, and thanks for the
Thanks.
work you're doing over there in Washington. Certainly here in St. Louis, we're happy to help you at Vitality Medical and Wellness Consulting. We said it earlier in the show, but if you're looking for someone who specializes in menopause or is just menopause aware, then go to the Menopause Society. They're a wonderful, wonderful resource that can get you pointed in the direction to take the next best step. I hope today's conversation resonated with you. Certainly, if you're listening and it did, this is because you're not alone and you're not imagining it. This is real. You can certainly find more support and resources and next steps. We'll post those in the show notes. And if this episode helped you feel seen, please share it with a woman who also needs to hear it and help her also feel seen. Until next time, it has been a wonderful show to be with you all today. Thank you so much, Susan, for being here with us. I hope we can have you back. Bless you for the work you're doing and just really encouraged by you being here. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All